Hey, welcome to Pretty Well. Do you want to get to the root causes of your health concerns? Do you find yourself Googling, why do I feel this way? And looking for solutions to feel great again? I'm Lisa Smith, and I too felt exhausted, achy, and like I was aging too quickly. I wanted to look and feel like myself again and spent way too much time and money going to practitioners, even functional medicine practitioners, and not getting results. So I became a functional medicine practitioner myself and learned how to identify and fix root causes to health issues. The good news is there is so much you can do to reclaim your wellness. In this podcast, you'll find quick, simple, and evidence-based guidance that you can easily fit into your day so your energy will be soaring, your mind clear, and your skin will return to its beautiful glow. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome to the Pretty Well. Hey, welcome back to the Pretty Well podcast. I'm Lisa Smith, and today I have Michael Collins. Mike has been completely sugar-free for over 30 years. He's the past chairman of the board of Food Addiction Institute and a current board member. It's a 501c3 nonprofit that helps raise awareness about processed food and sugar worldwide. He's also the founder of sugaraddiction.com, which has been helping thousands of people successfully quit sugar. And he's been the I'm gonna just edit this part out. Let me go back to the beginning of that, which has been helping thousands successfully quit sugar for over 15 years. In fact, he's helped more than 15,000 people cut back or completely eliminate sugar from their lives. Mike and his wife have raised their two children sugar-free from the womb up till 6 years old. And for over 35 years, Mike has worked closely with others to help them regain their lives that have been ravaged by various substance use disorders. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
It's a pleasure to have you here today. Mike, you have dedicated your life to helping people break free from addiction, specifically sugar, we'll talk about right now. But what in your life led up to that? And what brought you to the moment that you realized something had to change?
Good question. I can give you the short podcast version. It does. I think all of it's relevant. It sounds a little bit like Steve Martin's "I was born a small child," but at the end, this really started a generation ago with my mother. And so my grandmother died when she was only 8 years old, and it was you know, a traumatic. Obviously, she was the last child in the house, and my grandfather and her had to move in with his sister. He was working, and they owned a country store across the street. And my grandfather made a deal with his cousin Jim that anytime she walked into that store, she could have any kind of candy she wanted, just put it on his tab. And that was an important moment in the story that we're going to discuss here, because basically and genuinely, my mother grew up believing sugar was love. And I grew up this way. We were just covered up with sugar. I mean, 3 times the Kool-Aid recipe, three cups of sugar for one thing of Kool-Aid.
Wow.
Unfettered access to the sugar bowl. Like, no one even said, cut back a little. We were scraping off half an inch with the Cheerios and the cornflakes at the bottom with the milk when we were done. And so fast forward, I grow up that way. My mom's always baking and, buying candy, and it was just wild. About 14 or 15, I run into beer. Now, here's the important part of the story that will be the theme through it and be the important, like, the thing that's missing from the diet industry.
Yeah.
With the beer, I realized that I was changing my state. I was changing how I felt. Like, I knew that I was kind of shy. I could drink beer behind the high school and talk to girls at the dance. But at the end of the day, I knew that was happening, but I didn't know, and most people do not know, like my mother didn't know, that we use sugar for the same thing, okay? We use sugar to change how we feel, to tamp down feelings. And it's very unconscious. It's not like you need a beer on a Friday and because you had a rough week. It's very unconscious and it starts so young that you're really just fighting off you're just with stalling feelings from coming up and your withdrawal symptoms as an adult. It just manifests as a craving, like, I have a chocolate, I'll have a soda, whatever. So anyway, fast forward again at 28, I get sober. And I can talk about that if you want. I'm pretty much an open book about all that. But I just wanted to get healthy. And I read a book called Sugar Blues. Sugar Blues was written by a guy named William Duffy. And Duffy ended up marrying Gloria Swanson, the famous movie star. And they went all over the country doing like promoting that book. And it just kind of got stuck in my head somehow. And it took me years to get off flour and sugar and caffeine. But the reason I did is because it was acting like the drugs and the alcohol. It really was like, I mean, it was I just, it was like I had to have it, they used to call me the Mountain Dew man. I used to have 6 or 8 16-ounce Mountain Dews. It was, I mean, the caffeine and the sugar together was causing a lot of anxiety and stuff.
Hmm.
So anyway, again, I met a woman, got married, and somehow I talked her into having children with no sugar, no flour, no caffeine. Well, she actually no, we did have she did eat a little flour. No sugar, no caffeine in the womb, and then it lasted till they were 6 years old. And the reason we just collapsed. We couldn't take it anymore. We were fighting the parents, we were fighting the Montessori schools, we were fighting the grandparents, the friends' parents. Everybody thought literally and many people verbalized this, that we were depriving them of a childhood because they didn't have the sugar. Now, I could go on about the story of my boys, and you would think I was lying to you or bragging or both. That experiment was a success. And the reason I call it a success is because mentally, they now have huge nonprofits about this. First 1,000 days. There's a lot of names for them. There's two or three of them. And that first 1,000 days from conception to age 2 or 3, 2.5 or 3, the brain is growing so fast that the circuits are connecting so quickly that sugar is affecting that. Now they're calling Alzheimer's diabetes 3, right?
Yes. Hmm.
And it's really I mean, and we were talking earlier about the Quit Sugar Summit, the summit that I've put on for a decade now, and we've talked to 400 of the world's leading experts. And those experts have confirmed what I knew and maybe what Duffy knew and Gloria Swanson knew many years ago, is that sugar is Rodney Dangerfield, gets no respect. It doesn't get the respect that a drug or an alcohol does. Now, it does in some of the eating disorder world. I can go into that if you like, and the emotional eating world. Okay. And the
Hmm.
emotional eating folks, they only have half of the equation, maybe 50, 60% of the equation. They understand that it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you, right? Or the Oprah book, What Happened to You?
Hmm.
But the problem is that they believe moderation works, both the eating disorder people and the the emotional eating people. They believe that everyone can moderate sugar. Matter of fact, in the eating disorder world, binge eating or bulimia, you can't even, like, if you can't ingest flour or sugar, you're not well. You're not ready for detox. You're not ready for to be released from the center.
Hmm.
So anyway, the kids said I should write a book, and I opened sugaraddiction.com in 2009, and I was working. I had a regular life. I put out a lot of good information, but didn't really do anything. And so when the book came out in 2018, I started semi-retired. I started coaching and that kind of stuff. And then the pandemic hit. Okay. And I was kind of geared up. I was kind of ready. And I always knew, I always tell people I built the company backwards. I always knew we needed support meetings. And we had two, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, support meetings for the people who were taking our detox challenge and what have you, that I was coaching. Anyway, when the pandemic hit, you know what happened. You see the stories. Everybody's eating and sugar and flour and completely gone. Soda, ice cream, completely gone from the stores. And we went from 2 meetings a week to 4 or 5 meetings a day in 18 months. A day.
Wow.
Yeah. Because of the demand, because people were gaining weight and, their addiction, and I do mean it as an addiction, ramped up because of the financial stress and the disease stretch and the everything, that was stressful for
Oh,
folks.
very.
So anyway, again, fast forward, and we just got approved by the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches as a, and we do one-on-one coaching, and the numbers were a little bit off. We've done over 57,000 detoxes now, and it's just a community of people who believe via the science, via the research that we did. See, the guys at the Quit Sugar Summit were mostly academics who had been languishing in anonymity for many years, right? And we gave them a platform. And moreover, we created an ecosystem that today is, I don't want to get political, but a lot of the Maha stuff and all this stuff revolves around the work that we've done about metabolic syndrome and metabolic health, right? So anyway, that's the short version. I can answer. It usually brings up more questions than it answers, but that's how I got to be. And then the sugar-free man thing, that like somehow during the pandemic, somebody started calling me that, and that kind of stuck. So I took it on as a moniker.
So you're known as the sugar-free man.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
talked about a couple things that we want to unpack. First of all, tell
yeah.
us a little bit about the summit. Our listeners don't know about the summit. So what is
Yeah,
the summit? It's been going on for, you're going into your 10th year, you mentioned, but let's talk about what that is and how people, and I'll have links at the end of, in the show notes, but just
yeah.
so I don't forget to.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
Quit Sugar Summit is just what it sounds like, but it's an online summit that's totally free for a week in January every year. And what we do is we interview between 7 or 8 and 10 different speakers a day for an entire week.
Mhm.
And then, if somebody wants to buy the package, they can do it. But it's free for a week if they want to. It's like a full-time job, though. If you really want to watch it all week, you got to take the week off because the next day another eight will come on, and you can't catch the anyway. So
Yes.
it's you can just go to quitsugarsummit.com any time of the year and leave your email, and we'll notify you when the events come up. And we have other events and stuff too. But that's really it honestly, there were a lot of personal changes. When I started the summit, I had been like I don't know, 28, 27 years off of sugar and stuff, but I learned a lot from these folks, changed my own diet, changed my program a lot. So, I mean, there's been some real movement forward, I think, by the coalescing of the community that is the sugar reduction community, likely led by a gentleman, Dr. Robert Lustig, who is a professor emeritus at University of San Francisco, University of California, San Francisco. And I asked him once, Rob, like, aren't you afraid of the big sugar guys? He said, no, Mike, I got the science now. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful event, and it's really, I think, moved the needle forward. Dr. Lustig always says it's a 30-year game. I'm like, 30 years? 30 years, like before this, it becomes like drinking and driving or smoking cigarettes, where
Mhm.
I don't think it's ever going to be illegal, but I think it's going to be an adult treat. I believe that. I think it's going to be an adult treat. So, yeah, that's the summit.
Yeah, Dr. Lustig, he has been talking also like you for years about the dangers of sugar and
Yeah.
the addictive nature of sugar. I've been following him for a really long time. So that summit sounds fantastic. I'll definitely have that in the show notes. Also, you mentioned your book. Would you talk about your book a bit? What's the title of it? And then we're going to get into other questions, but I want to make sure I have that also for our
Yeah,
listeners.
no problem. The last resort sugar detox is exactly what it sounds like. We are the last house on the block. Strangely enough, 85 plus percent of my clients are women between 40 and 90. I like to say 40, but it's probably closer to 50 and 90.
Mhm.
Premenopausal women till about 80 or 90 who like have fought with sugar their whole lives and dieting their whole lives. And they've just said to themselves, they know that sugar is their Achilles heel. And the book kind of goes into my story that I just told about addiction and stuff, and how I tied addiction recovery to what people believe is a diet. Okay. A lot of people believe that it's eat less, exercise more. And that's brainwashing from the diet industry, which is not working, obviously, because we keep getting fatter and fatter and sicker. And
Mhm.
it's just um, it, you know, the book really honestly needs to be updated because I think a lot of the food plan I've completely changed, but it does give us that connection, if you will, that we're hopefully going to discuss here, which is sugar. I think at the end of the day, when in 50 years, when we have the diagnostic tools to prove this, is a brain illness. It's a dopamine dysregulation problem. It is not the sugar itself, but the dose makes the poison. You know, we take a little heroin, we take a little cocaine, we take a little alcohol. But the average person in the United States is pounding 21 teaspoons a day of sugar. Now, that's average. Like my clients are up in the 30 and 40 and sometimes even 50 teaspoons of sugar a day range. And so, like, it's it's very obvious to me after my kids, after, 50 some odd thousand detoxes and thousands of one-on-one clients with myself and our 26 coaches. It's very obvious to me what's going on. But what's not as obvious, and that's what the summit's about, is that most people don't put these two and two together. Even this is an interesting story. So again, I'm kind of open about my recovery from drugs and alcohol. I just celebrated 40 years of sobriety, but
Congratulations.
because I was open about it, I attracted a lot of recovering people, right? People that already were sober 5, 10, 15. One of my coaches was sober 20 years and they couldn't put down the sugar. And to
Mm.
a man, to a woman, every single one of them said quitting sugar was harder than quitting their original drug of choice. And so that message alone of 500 people should give people an indication that if they're struggling with sugar, they might want to take a look at this modality of transformation, this way of changing, because it's never going to work to eat less and exercise more. I have a coach who's an ultra marathoner. She was running 100 miles a week in her 50s. And she still could not take off that last 15 pounds. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Now that 15 pounds is gone, her times are down, the best in her life. So, there's a lot more to it than people realize. It's just not in the public eye yet. It just hasn't, because, there's a lot of people that are making a lot of money making sure that that information doesn't get out.
Follow the money trail. Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about it. You said you had hoped we would unpack it. Let's talk about the
Yeah.
mechanism of action, the biochemistry, what's actually happening. So sugar tastes great, but
Mhm.
what's it doing under the hood?
Well, I love that question. And I think it's the cruelest joke the universe ever played to make it taste good, right? Alcohol, your first time you taste it, look, then you kind of get a taste for it. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, the answer to your question is sugar affects mostly when I use the word dopamine, just for reference to your audience and yourself, is that when I use the word dopamine, what I mean is because everybody knows what dopamine means now, or starting to know. I mean dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, GABA, oxytocin, adrenal glands, endorphins, cannabinoid receptors. Every brain, probably more, but every brain and body receptor in in the body is affected by sugar. And when people ingest sugar, they get an imperceptible buzz or an ability to tamp down feelings, no different than alcohol or opioids, right? It's just you do more of it through the day. You keep it steady. Everybody's seen the whole cake and ice cream comes out at a birthday party for 5-year-olds, and all hell breaks loose. It's just bedlam because they're hiding behind their mother's leg for most of the day, and then all of a sudden they get the sugar in them and they're literally bouncing off the walls. And what happens is because now the food system, 85% of the products in the food system have sugar in it, people unconsciously develop this habit. It's not like, man, my boss is an ass today. Man, my husband's pain. The kids are making me crazy. I need some sugar. You don't think that like you do with a beer. I need a beer at the end of the day or whatever. What you just think is, I have a craving for sugar. I'm at you end up at the vending machine at work, or you end up at the 7-Eleven on the way home, or you have it in the refrigerator and the day is over and you start thinking about stuff, and then you just take the edge off with the sugar or the chocolate or caffeine or whatever. And it's that our job, our only job is to raise that process, that affecting the brain reward and body reward chemicals to the conscious level, till they understand what's actually happening, what they're actually doing. And like my coach, the ultra marathoner, they're never gonna diet this off. They're never gonna run this off. They're never gonna exercise. If 85% of people come to me for weight loss, and that's how I get them. That's how I trick them. It's like because that's what they think they want. Because
Mm-hmm.
every diet book on the planet says quit the white stuff, quit the
Yeah.
sugar, quit the pasta, quit the rice. Blah, 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 blah. But they don't explain the part I'm explaining. They don't explain the second part. That's why 95% of those people that lose any amount of weight gain it all back. And it's very easy to explain from what I'm, attempting to explain here is that exercise is one of the best ways to calm your brain reward chemicals, to give you shots of dopamine, to give you endorphins, so that when you substitute the lack of sugar and flour for the exercise for a time, it begins to work, right? Metabolically, we know it works. This whole calories in, calories out thing is total BS. This is a chemical reaction,
Mhm.
not what's called they measure calories in a bomb calorimeter. That's like the amount of effort or fuel it takes to raise water for one degree or some crazy thing like that. But that's not what happens in the body. What happens is this chemical reaction in the brain of soothing, of taking the edge off, of just not feeling as bad as you did before.
Hmm.
So if you're exercising for 2 or 3 months and you're losing weight because you're cutting back on the stuff that causes it, the fructose mostly, and don't let me talk about fructose,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
fructose you've cut back, so your liver's not producing fat by excess fructose.
Mhm.
What happens is you get to month 3 or 4, you've lost 20 or 30 pounds, and then there's a divorce or a financial situation or crazy kids or whatever. And you don't say to yourself, I deserve a reward. I want to go backwards. I want to quit doing this diet. You say, wouldn't a soda be nice? Wouldn't a little sugar be nice? If I've heard that story once, I've heard it 10,000 times. No exaggeration, 10,000 times. People, they have that little sugar at their sister's wedding and they're off to the races and they gain all their weight back, right? So it's been for me, I've just watched the meetings. I've just watched people attempt this over and over, and we've iterated and iterated and adjusted until we got to where we are today, where we got approved by the national board because, it's just different than people understand it to be. What is happening inside of their body, to, completely answer your question, is different than what people think it is. Where you eat less and exercise more, that you will quote unquote burn something off. It's just not how it works. And
Mhm.
that part is my message, coupled with the addiction recovery piece of the puzzle, meaning that most people come to us, in essence, are suffering something that is, they know what it is. It's codependency. It's an inability to stick up for yourself, an inability to say no, an inability to, self-soothe yourself in some other way that doesn't include a substance, right? And so we always call the difference between effort-based dopamine and substance-based dopamine. Effort-based dopamine is exercise, yoga, a hug, a manicure, a pedicure, a massage, a sunset, cooking healthy food. These things produce dopamine as well. But
Mhm.
sugar is so easy and so unconscious in our behavior from when we were 4 or 5 years old, that we keep using the easy one. I don't know. I get off on I don't mean to get on my soapbox, but I just want, this is a mess. This is part of the message that, we just have to get out there, or people will continue to follow the $78 billion diet industry, which is not working.
Mm-mm. No, that's definitely not the solution. So you've mentioned a couple of times, Mike, that, it's been ingrained in our minds that it's calories in, calories out, and you just need to restrict what you're eating, especially the white stuff, add more whole foods, and then exercise more, and you should be good. And you found that advice has failed people now over 50,000 times in your experience the people you work with.
Right.
So what is what help us to understand, you've given us some of the biochemistry of how our neurotransmitters are just hijacked when we reach for that little soothing soda or whatever it might be, piece of
Yeah.
chocolate or more.
Yeah.
But what then what then helps it to be sustainable? I've
Oh, great
I've
question.
coached so many people as well, and they've done so well for so long, lost 50 pounds, 60 pounds more. But you're right, it's that one little trigger. And then they'll reach out and say, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, but I'm back on this hamster wheel. So
They
help us.
actually say exactly that, right? They say, I
They
don't know
do.
what happened. I don't know what
They,
happened.
they do. Or they'll say, I went through a really stressful time and, I just gave in. I've heard that too.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean,
Well,
that's
I mean,
fair, right? But
yeah,
so
no, it's fair. I mean, at
you.
least they're aware that it was the stressful time, but they don't kind of connect it either,
Yeah.
They don't put the two together, that they are medicating, genuinely medicating, right?
I
They
find it
don't-
depends on the person. I do think some people do know that,
Okay, yeah, you're right,
like
you're right.
it's my crutch, but I hear what you're saying. So how do you help people?
Well, the transformation is what we're all about. The discovery. I love the phrase in the recovery movement where um, treatment is discovery and meetings are recovery. Okay.
That's
And
good.
so, yeah, I mean, it's a situation where I do this in my challenge, right? So they get them to day 29 and they say, ha, ha, I tricked you, because they came for weight loss and they're losing some weight.
Yeah.
But in order to answer your question, in order for them to answer the question for themselves, is that you have to sustain it. Has to become a lifestyle. And the
Mm,
common phrase is, the common question is, Mike, do I have to do this for the rest of my life?
good. And
Here's the
that,
numbers from the Food Addiction Institute and people that have been doing this even longer than I have. It's about a third of people biochemically cannot ingest sugar without setting up cravings for more sugar.
okay.
And these numbers, while they run parallel to or almost identical to the obesity numbers, a third overweight, a third obese, a third overweight, and a third normal, you can be a very thin sugar addict, a la my ultra marathoner there. Um, but about a third of people on top of the people who can ingest it. And it's not my job to call them an addict, okay? It's my only job in life is to get them to see 90 days of 100% abstinence, okay? That's it. The rest of it, they decide. Okay. What happens likely is they will get an ingestation, whether accidental or on purpose, and they'll feel terrible. They're like, how could I have felt this bad for decades and not realized it because they were feeling so good after 90 days of abstinence, right? Their
Mhm.
skin clears up, their weight goes down, their brain. The part that's crazy is that people have lost hundreds of pounds. They put type 2 diabetes in remission, rheumatoid arthritis in remission, lupus, chronic fatigue. Most all autoimmunes have had a remission of some sort. And but the most important part is that their brain came back online, that they were thinking better, they were remembering better, clear.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the numbers. A third of people just biochemically, they're addicts. Okay. That's my term, not their term yet. A third
Mhm.
of the people are what we call harmful users. Harmful users are people who, just because there's so much sugar in the food system, they ate regular food and they gain a pound a year since high school and they're overweight now. But with a reset, those folks can go back to some modicum of, sugar at birthdays or celebrations. And then
Mhm.
there's a third of people who are just like normal. I mean, that's probably an overused word, but they just can, take it or leave it. Just like your friend who can drink half a beer and never think about it for a month.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. And then, there's a lot of theories around it. My personal one is that we learned very early on that sugar helped us. This translated into alcohol and drugs too, but that sugar helped us quell everyday stresses and strains. God forbid any childhood, any trauma, sexual, physical trauma. But it wasn't a conscious thing. Again, we didn't say I need a beer to because I remember this terrible incident.
Mhm.
Um, it was just there, ubiquitous, almost free, and even a child can score it. And so they just began ingesting a lot of it, and it helped unconsciously give those dopamine hits and all the other ones I mentioned. And so that continued and it just kept, and it became a pattern that they couldn't seem to get out of because when you stop back to the transformation process, you got a detox. And
Mhm.
detox sucks. Like you got headaches, you're irritable, you're starving, your sleep's messed up, your digestion's messed up, your skin gets broken out. I mean, just a million different things happen to different people. And most people don't realize that consciously, but unconsciously, they know that a little bit of sugar will stop that in its tracks. The headaches will go away, the irritability will go away, even whatever the rashes. But they don't say, "Oh, I gotta, I can't be irritable with my kids. I'm gonna have sugar." It's just that they say, "Let me just they have a quote unquote craving." This is what I study the most: cravings and denial. Like, what is the craving? Where does it come from? You know, this is a deep, deep limbic brain function. Okay. And Oprah has a great book with a guy named Dr. Bruce Perry that talks about building the brain from the base up to the frontal cortex, right? And the frontal cortex is literally hijacked. It's hijacked. And I say this, and I've been getting strong, and I have a real good explanation for this. I tell people when they come to me that they are not in a mental state to make the decisions they need about their health and their weight. Like they are not capable because of their sugar habit, especially if like they're 50 or 100 pounds overweight. And there's like recoil, right? They're like, who's this arrogant ass, right? How does he know this, right? I'm a brilliant lawyer. I'm a doctor. I got, three doctors as coaches and they're in recovery. They couldn't quit. And so like 6 months later, they say to me, Mike, I cannot believe that when I met you 2 weeks before I had thrown the cake in the garbage, poured dishwashing liquid over it, and then an hour later I came back and cut the dishwashing liquid off and ate the rest of the cake. 20% of the people that call me for coaching are crying. They think I never heard these stories before. They think like they're the only human being on the planet that ever had this, that ever did this, right? And so it's like, and they're, multimillionaires, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're accomplished people in their life.
Yep.
But for some reason, their front, and not a fun reason, the one that we've been discussing this time is like their brain is captured by this drug that provides a self-soothing, an unconscious self-soothing that allows them not to feel something. And sometimes they don't even know what they're not wanting to feel. They just begin the inkling of the feeling, whether it's old trauma or new stressors and strains, and they just go to the vending machine or go to the 7.
Mm.
So it takes about the arc of a podcast like this to explain the different disparate nuanced pieces of this puzzle, and then to hopefully and then tie them together so that people can answer your question is, what do you do? A, you got to detox, and then B, it has to become a lifestyle. And the only way it becomes a lifestyle, because you will be an outlier, you will be alone. There's nobody in your family group, friend group, or work group that's going to be like this. And so you have to have a community of people where it's cool to be 100 days sugar free. It's cool to lose 100 pounds. You have to have that. We are tribe animals. And that, I call it our secret sauce. That is why our stuff works, why we have thousands of written testimonials, unsolicited written testimonials of people who have gone through this. And many of them will tell you they thought I was nuts at the beginning. They thought, I can moderate this. There is another way. I can think my way out of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they just didn't want to hurt anymore. They didn't want to hurt emotionally anymore. They didn't want to hurt physically anymore. They didn't want to be overweight. They didn't want to be sick. And
Mm-hmm.
they said, okay, there's hundreds of people in these groups that have my story. Like they were me, and now they're not. So maybe we should try this, or I should try it. So yeah, I mean, again, it's frustrating a little because there's no pill or potion I can give you. There's no way to do it without doing it, and there's a little bit of work involved. It scares people off, I guess.
Yeah, it is scary. There is, well, the detox piece, that's one piece, but we know that's temporary. But then changing your identity to become someone, I like how James Clear says it in Atomic Habits when he talks about when we need to make a transformation, like
Yes,
what you're speaking about. And that is a change in identity. It's not, oh, I'm someone who's trying to quit sugar. It's, I'm someone who no longer eats sugar. And it's that sounds like semantics, but it's not. Once that lodges in your brain and you begin to identify as that person, then then that's a very significant shift that helps to.
I agree 110%. That's exactly correct, and that's right. And it's hard because I I, I think the figure is 85% of our people don't have spousal support. And
Oh,
it's
oh,
really difficult
yeah.
to do it in a household where you're maybe preparing the meals, or people have to eat together and stuff. And
Mhm.
to change your identity in that way is hard. If you're not, I mean, I always like the phrase in personal development, you become the average of the 5 people that you hang around with the most. But there's now peer-reviewed science, you become the average weight of the 5 people you hang around.
Yes, I've seen that. I've seen
Yeah,
that sign. Absolutely. That's factual.
yeah.
And it's so hard. Think about if you're trying to give up alcohol and you drink every night, and so does your spouse, and only one of you chooses to give up. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
seeing that in front of you, it's the same with sugar. Seeing that in front of you is extremely challenging because everything in your brain, your neurotransmitters, everything is like, I just want that feeling. Like I just
You're
want that.
screaming for it, right?
Yeah,
That's
that's
right. And what does Dr. Lustig say? You cannot fight this metabolic system. It's impossible to fight it. And one of the beauties of it is that after you get 30 days of abstinence, that what you're describing, that need, it just quiets, it calms down. You don't really, and so it's kind of a catch 22 that when it's not in your system, you don't have the cravings, right?
Mhm.
And so,
It's
um,
true.
but you still have to do the work because one of the things I study a lot is, and this is important, is that, no one knows. A lot of this cascaded from a book called The Body Keeps the Score.
I know I have the book. Yeah.
A lot of it came from that work, and he doesn't really even mention addiction much, but no one knows, and I don't think even he knows, Bethel Vanderkolk, I don't think he even knows, is that you do you have to process all of this old trauma or this old grief or something, one for one? Like, do you have to like go through everything you didn't go through that you ate your way through or drank your way through or whatever? I don't think anyone knows. There's a lot of like tapping and MDR or whatever that is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways where people can, but I think that's on the surface. I think it'll help for a while, but I think that I use this analogy, and you can tell me. I keep practicing it. I'll see if it works for you.
Okay.
So it's like popping a zit, okay? And you're a teenager or even as an adult, as I had adult acne when I used sugar. It's like you pop this zit, and if that thing hits the mirror and bleeds nice red, it'll be gone the next day or a day later, right? But if you only get half of it,
Hmm.
you only get like just, and it doesn't come out right, it'll grow again and it'll grow again. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think this is a lot to do with if you don't do the work that I'm describing, meaning once you have the abstinence, whatever it's from, sugar, alcohol, doesn't matter. But sugar, once you have the abstinence, you have to do the work of why you were unconsciously ingesting it, or it's not gonna it's not gonna stick. Because as the book states, and I love the phrase, he doesn't, this is another person that came up, the issues are in the tissues. That's stuck in you. That trauma is stuck in your body. And this has to be remedied in some way or not. Now, a lot of one of my contemporaries, who I'm as close, I consider her in our program, the best in the world.
Mhm.
Like, she believes that the biochemical repair is first, and it's important, but it's really important to understand that on day 5 or 15 or 20 or 30, these things may present themselves. And they don't feel like I'm remembering this car accident or this divorce. They present as like a free floating anxiety, weepiness, and they present differently in different people for different reasons, depending on their habit, right? And so if you don't guide people, if they don't have a guide through this, they're going back. Just like the diet industry, they go back because they don't know what's hitting them. They don't understand what's going on. They feel this way, and their brain is screaming for a little bit of dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, blah, blah, blah. It's screaming for just a little relief, not like I should have sugar because I'll feel better, but the cravings, quote unquote, somehow the limbic brain transfers it into the frontal cortex that they should go out in a snowstorm to get ice cream, right? They, and God only knows how it happens. We don't have the diagnostic tools to prove this yet, or to show this is possible. But from over thousands of stories of this, I know this to be true in my heart. I've seen it up close and personal so many times that I know it's true. So yeah, I mean, again, it's not rocket science, but there are some nuances to it, and what is anything that moves into the future? Usually some new creation. It's a collaboration of different parts of knowledge or art or music or something. And that's what this is. It's a place where we've come, that there is the science to back what I'm saying up. There is the experience now to back it up, but it's not known mostly. It's still under that eat less, exercise more crap.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah. And so how have you seen people be successful in dealing with the deeper issues? Actually, I have a guest on. Just had a guest on who just talked about deep stress, and deep stress sometimes is stuff we repress, traumas from childhood or stressors from childhood. Um, how have you seen people be successful, Mike, in dealing with whatever that is, packaged from the past, or maybe you said present stressors?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. And I like the phrase deep stress. I really do. I think I've never heard it, those two words together, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's Dr. David Clark. That's his wheelhouse, and it was fascinating. Just like our discussion is fascinating, but I think they beautifully. I'm so glad you're right next to each other because they beautifully go hand in hand. But
Yeah,
back
for
to the
sure.
question. Hmm.
So the answer to the question of how do you get through it is first you got to be aware that that's what's happening. First, you
Hmm.
got to be aware that that's what you did, not consciously. You didn't say when you were 6 that, oh, I feel mom's being mean to me. I'm going to have some sugar. I'm going to sneak some cookies.
Hmm.
That's not how it worked. That's not how you got here. How you got here was the ubiquitousness, the constant on drip of sugar all over the world that's almost free. It's very inexpensive, not like it's a problem for a child to get it or anybody to get it. And so
Right.
we have to bring that to we have to take it from the unconscious to the conscious awareness of this. And we do this by journaling. We do this by talking to one another. Like people say, oh, I slipped, I did this, I this. Like it happened the other day. This is the craziest thing you ever seen. So one of my doctors, she's like, she was struggling and she courageous as hell and was willing to be coached live on YouTube. So we got this going on, right? And so I'm not talking out of school because you can look this up on YouTube. And
Right.
so she quote unquote binge slipped, whatever. I don't believe slips. I think they're planned. I think in the back of our mind, we're going to reward ourselves, and this is both alcohol and sugar or whatever, drugs and sugar.
Hmm.
And she said, I don't understand. I've been doing so good. I was 21 days. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, and we come to find out that that morning she had visited her mother in the Alzheimer's unit, and her mother was just cognizant enough to be the way that her mother was, which was demeaning and narcissistic and why aren't you good enough kind of thing. And she forgot. I mean, she didn't like put the two together. Like they weren't, this is a woman who's been practicing medicine for 30 years. Like she didn't put it together, right? And then the tears come and then she realized, so it's
Yeah.
like it's very real to watch it in real time in coaching sessions and in groups and to be able to explain it to people to raise it to the conscious level. Then I consider it a blessing to be able to deliver the message because once people get it, once the light bulb goes on, then you know do they do much better. Now that's not to say they don't slip once in a while or whatever, but you know, most people don't want to feel bad, and you do feel bad the next day, or even later that day, and you got to sleep, and you get sweats at night, and you're hungry the next day, and you're irritable the next day. Like
Yep.
people
Yep.
lives get too short, especially when you didn't realize it till you're 40 or 50 years old, and you're like, life's too much. I don't want to be feeling bad every day, and I don't want to be overweight, or I don't want to get Alzheimer's. People look at their family of origin and they see the diabetes and they see the Alzheimer's and they're like, I'm not going there, hopefully if they have some resolve.
Yes. And let's take a step back to that slip, as you said. That slip, you
Yes.
you said so much there about that doctor. She's a great example that we can all put ourselves in, that she didn't make the connection. And there's a lot of reason for why she didn't make that connection because she had been protecting herself all those years from growing up with a narcissist. Her brain isn't going to say, "Oh, let's unpack this painful thing again that I just saw my mom." Like,
Right.
let's just close that up, grab a candy bar and be done with this and move on and have a good day. And
Right.
that I believe that is a protective mechanism of the brain saying, I just don't want to dig back. That was very painful all those years. I
Yeah.
don't need to take the scab off of that wound. But what you said is so powerful that these slips aren't necessarily slips. If we look at them as kind messages, from our prefrontal cortex or from our body, maybe even, maybe not just that wouldn't be prefrontal because that would be, we'd be more aware of it. But if we look at them as kind messages from our body that say, hey, this is not a shameful thing. This is a sign for you. I'm giving you this gift. There's a reason for this slip. Now
I like it.
let's
Yeah.
dig deeper and figure that out.
Yeah. No, that's it. A lot of people, you're right, 110%, but a lot of people aren't willing. And they think it's a little woo-woo sometimes, you know. They're like,
Yeah.
how many times have I heard, it's only sugar. It can't be that, you know, it can't be what you're describing. Here's
Mm.
another part. Here's an interesting part, which dovetails exactly what you're saying. So I've had people come to me with 20 years of talk therapy, 20 years. And a lot
Yes.
of that 20 years, they talked about their weight problem and their emotional issues and whatever. And on top of that, some of them, not all, but some of them were doing psychotropic meds, right? They're doing all kind of different whatever. You know,
Yeah.
I won't mention all the brand names, but you know what I'm talking
Yep.
about for depression and anxiety and all that. And so the problem is in that 50 minutes, these people are super knowledgeable about their childhood problems, issues, traumas, their inner child. They know it all, but they undo it on the way home at the 7-Eleven. They do not understand that you know getting over a divorce or getting over something you know some trauma whatever doesn't take 50 minutes. It takes 50 days or 50 weeks or 50 years sometimes. It takes a while, you know, to get to heal from that type of hurt. And so they've kept, and there's a lot, their intellect is there, you can see it, they're not dumb people, they're obviously can afford therapy. So, but they're like, they get it, and they're always fighting. I had this woman, she, you know her name if I told you, she did women empowerment seminars for 30 years, right? She bought a $10 million house on vacation, but she
Wow.
carried 30 pounds during that 30 years. And she was retired now, but, and, uh, and she fought me tooth and nail about what we're discussing here. She
Hmm.
said, I used to give shame seminars. No, 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 whatever. And I'm like, tooth and nail, this was not the answer to what was going on with her, you know? But she finally, and it's not my job to make people cry. I don't want them to cry, but I want them to break through and understand that, you know, if they get 50, and sometimes it's 50 days, it doesn't matter, nobody knows, but it doesn't, it presents at different times for different people. But there's some weird emotion that happens and they can't go to the sugar. So they got to go forward. They got to change. They got to deal with it. They got to feel it. And that part is my message, I guess. You know, that's the the golden key to the golden lock, the missing piece of the puzzle in the diet industry and the weight loss and the health and the metabolic health syndrome stuff. It's because this stuff is um, locked in the body and held down by the substance, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. So what was she fighting you on? That she just needed to get rid of that last bit of sugar, or what was
Well,
that
she didn't think that there was a tie-in of
to
what
the
we've
sugar
discussed.
or
No, to the trauma. But when I got into her family stuff, man, the floodgates open. The story is mind-boggling. You
wow.
know, it's like the story of her siblings and herself. It's mind-boggling. And that was not going to be part of the discussion unless I got her there. You know, we got her there, like she got herself there, whatever. Like that was not going to, we weren't, there was no, in her mind, there was no reason to be talking about that or
I
no reason to be
see.
quote unquote feeling that.
I see. I see. She just wanted to help me quit the sugar and let's move on
Yeah,
and
yeah. What do I eat? Most people come to me, they want a food plan and an exercise plan because that's what you get when you go on a diet.
hmm
People tell you this is what you eat, these are your supplements, these are your push-ups, blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't work. You know, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's that's good. That and so then once she was able to see the link when you finally broke through, that's when she had long term.
Yeah,
success.
that's 2.5 years ago. She sends me postcards from Italy, and like she's like thin.
Oh. And more importantly, she's healthier. She doesn't have joint pain, brain
No,
fog. You
right.
know, she's not setting her brain up for type 3 diabetes, Alzheimer's. And like
Yep.
there's so many other pieces. I've helped people get off sugar, but I didn't have this piece you have. You bring a very you bring a different perspective that's missing everywhere because when people would go back on it, I'd be like, oh, what are we missing? But I remember so many people have said, my joint pain is gone. I had chronic joint pain
That's the
for over
number one. Yeah,
10
yeah,
years. Yeah, it's gone, literally all gone.
yep.
Inflammation, my bloating, my brain fog, all of my chronic fatigue, a lot of that. So it's great information. Now
Yeah, no.
we can't forget to talk about fructose. So let's make sure we get to that.
Yeah, no, fructose is, Dr. Lustig calls it the offending molecule, if you will. Fructose is and I think what's going to happen when we do have the diagnostic tools and Dr. Richard Johnson is really a pioneer in all this, is that, and he's got a grant from the NIH that believes that if he can block the fructose pathway, he can cure alcoholism. And
Mm.
and the bottom line is that fructose causes all the fat. In other words, we were this is kind of evolutionary biology a little bit, but we got fructose once or twice a year, right? When we could find those nasty little berries, those nasty little crab apples, and only at the peak of ripeness. Not we didn't eat them like when they're almost ripe. We only ate them in evolutionary times when they were ripe. So that was about a week, right? Maybe. And the dopamine was created to remember where that bush is next year. And so the fructose causes the fatty liver, causes fat. And also, fructose, in my opinion, and I've asked Lustig and a bunch of other people, is fructose a psychoactive drug?
Mhm.
And they've said yes. Okay. They
Mhm.
said yes, it's a psychoactive drug. And so what happens is this constant drip of, and for your audience, the table sugar model is half glucose and half fructose. And so this processed product is half fructose, and you're getting that little buzz, and you're causing fatty liver, and you're causing your body to gain weight because this was the evolutionary symptom or the evolutionary result of ingesting. I mean, the common phrase, I'm not a fan of this one, but the common example they use is bears eat like 10,000 blueberries before hibernation, gain the weight, and so that they can, because they eat it, when the berries are ripe kind of thing.
Mhm.
And, but because humans don't hibernate. But anyway, what I'm getting at is that this molecule, this is important. The molecule in the table sugar is exactly the same molecule as it is in the orange. Okay.
Okay.
And so the orange, and let's look up seedless oranges, seedless grapes. Seedless grapes are like candy. That's like dried fruits. This stuff is all fructose, right? And it's the if you look at the problem of obesity, started in the 1980s in mass, and now till today, it parallels the rise of high fructose corn syrup in everything, right? And so it truly is, and I think in the scientific literature, people want to know the science. You're very astute in wanting to know what's the transformational change. Not forget about the science. I sold this to the good doctor there one time, and he says, because he gets too far off into the science, right? And people kind of zone out. So I have to learn a story like I'm telling you why the transformation is not happening, right?
Mhm.
And it's really, I say, if you want to get off sugar, study fructose. Because fructose is the main evil component in all this. And it's very different than what we evolved to process. And it's just, we were just not supposed to have a 24/7 drip of fructose.
Mhm.
And the idea that it could be psychoactive, it could be a drug of abuse in that way, and that it's not likely, I mean, I think glucose spikes aren't good, because the brain gets a glucose spike when you eat this stuff too.
Mhm.
But the idea of not being able to stop, which is damn, all the science be damned. I love all my professors and MDs and PhDs, but they tell me nothing. They tell my people nothing. You know, this is important. Like I've done webinars on this. A lot of my people, this is a test. So go to Google, folks, and Google information gathering and dopamine. And you will see all of these studies. People are literally gathering all this information, bouncing that dopamine. Oh my God, that's right. Oh my God. And then they go use the sugar, back and forth, like just using different types of dopamine. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what I wanted to finish saying was, what did I want to finish saying? Is that the behavioral change, we have been studying the body. Think about it, the body for 100 plus years. We know about diabetes and weight gain and fatty liver and heart disease and blah, blah. We know already. Stop. We know already. What we do not know is why people can't stop when they say they're going to stop.
Mhm.
They can't articulate. These brilliant people, they come to me with their tail between their legs, and say, Mike, I slipped again. I don't know why, right? Because they're not willing to look at what we have kind of talked about this whole hour, is that it's involved in their emotional life and the brain power. The whole Georgia Ede kind of Chris Palmer, like this is affecting their behavior because it's affecting their brain and then their emotional life, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And again, Rodney Dangerfield, sugar doesn't get the respect that it should. Like, it's a very common construct in the world of alcohol and drugs that if you started using alcohol and drugs at 14 or 15, you stop growing emotionally, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's well known in treatment centers and 12 steps. It's just a well known concept. Your life's upside down, your finances, your career, your relationships, everything's screwed up because instead of solving life's adult problems, you got freaked out, and 4 o'clock every day you went back to whatever it was.
Mhm.
And that goes on for decades sometimes. And now we have to include sugar in this. Again, the emotional eating folks have it 50% right or 60% right. They just don't have the abstinence piece of the puzzle. Oh, and I wanted to say something I forgot about. When you said when my clients they slipped and you're like, oh, how do we go wrong here? I have what we call around here when I do train a coach, a doctor, or somebody with a bricks and mortar practice or internet practices, they have what's called a compliance issue. And here's what the compliance issue is. Go back to the numbers. A third addicts, a third harmful users, and a third normal. Likely, their practice has involved mostly harmful users. And so they were able to tell them, articulate it, and it wasn't that hard. And the
Mhm.
ones that slipped away were addicts because
Yeah.
the other part of the puzzle wasn't there. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
the other part of and that's a lot of them that are coming to me now to get certified. We certify coaches is that because they can't take people going away anymore because they know they're successful if their protocol for bone health or rheumatoid arthritis or whatever it is begins with quitting sugar, and 2/3 of their people can do it. They're
Mhm.
like freaking out. Like, why is this other people can't do it? They're
Yes.
both as smart, they're the same people, right?
Yes. Yes, in practice, that has been my experience too. And it hurts you too as a practitioner
It
because like,
hurts
I
hard,
want
yeah,
to help you. I want you to enjoy this life free of this ball and chain. So
yeah,
no, I totally get that. That makes so much sense to me when you look at one third, one third, one third, because two
yeah,
thirds really can be successful. You put some
sure,
things into shape, but that one third needs that extra help.
Yeah.
to dig deeper and figure out for, and I'm sure it's very, but it's very individual. It's very, each person, there are different triggers and different things. For instance, the doctor you mentioned who you coached,
Yeah.
on air. But to be able to help that person really drill down and figure that out, that's amazing too and
The
rewarding.
hard part is getting them to believe that one has anything to do with the other. You know,
Yeah,
they don't think they're not related or something because they've been told if they exercise more or if they restrict more. The
yeah,
weird part about both food addiction or eating disorders and different stuff is you end up eating more food because you've been restricted for 30 years. You end up eating more food to be healthy and thin than you would when you were quote unquote restrict. You know what I mean?
you do,
It's
and
like
you're
an
not as
anomaly,
hungry.
and you're
Yeah,
not hungry, and you're
those
because you're eating the right stuff.
right. Those
I
simple
mean,
carbs, they just burn up just like kindling on a fire and you're hungry
that's
all
right.
the time, all the time.
One of
Yeah,
the things people like freak out when I tell them they don't think it's possible is that growling stomach or that hangry I gotta eat now never happens again. It just goes away. Like
that's
'cause
right.
that's not a true hunger signal. It's a sugar addiction withdrawal or flour addiction withdrawal symptom.
Yeah, and a blood sugar crash at the same time.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have lived it. I know. I'm you're preaching to the choir for sure. This is fantastic. So how do people find you, find out more about you? Do you how do people join your group, work with you?
Yeah, we've been focusing a lot of the growth at sugardetox.com. Um, I used to be in the domain business before, or I still am a little bit, but like so it's easy to find sugardetox.com or sugar free man. You just Google Mike Collins sugar, you'll find it. But
Okay,
there's some free stuff and resources and stuff at sugardetox.com that you can find. And
great.
that's probably the best way to, get on a mailing list and start to, I always say, let the information light on you, like maybe I sound like a crazy man, and maybe like what it's like, but just let it, if this has resonated at all, let it light on you for a little bit, let it sink in a little bit. Maybe compare it to your experience with the cabbage soup diet. you
Yeah.
know, see if
Yeah.
maybe, and I know it's scary to think about a lifetime of no more sugar or celebrations or what have you. But I can guarantee, I don't want to get like, what's the word, like thin is better than this. Or, I don't want to have
hmm
soundbite sayings, but I do want to say that like health, dancing at your grandchildren's wedding, things that you really want to do are much easier if you just, it's not good, it's not bad. Like you have brown eyes, I have green eyes. It's like it just is. And this is a personal development, spiritual construct of acceptance. Just accept the idea that you may fall into that one third. You
hmm
may be the person who, at least for a time, like give it that, I call it the gift of 90 days. Just give yourself 90 days of trying what this crazy guy is saying, like try it and see if it works. And if it
Yeah.
doesn't, I'll refund the weight, the misery, the the brain fog, the joint pain. I'll give it all back to
Yeah, there you go. Well, before we go, that just brings up something real quickly. If someone is in that one third
you.
and
Yeah.
the celebrations still happen, the birthdays still happen, you know, I I have a great, if something happened to me, I had to become gluten free years ago. Well, when you're
Yeah.
gluten free, you don't enjoy the cake at the birthday party. You
Right.
shift and you go somewhere else. But if that's not the case and you're trying to still enjoy the celebration, what are your suggestions for someone so they're not completely left out? Yeah, could they take
That's
like,
a that's a really, astute kind of question. So look, I think you have to focus on different things. You have to focus on the joy of being together, the joy of whatever's being celebrated, I know this is hard, like the idea that your hunger signals will change. Your what you believe will change. And in the first phase, you're a little judgmental, which is
Hmm.
okay. It's normal. You're like, these people are crazy. Like, I used to be these people.
They're eating poison. I went through that stage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? These people are nuts.
Mhm.
And then you kind of go through this idea that you feel sorry for them, you have empathy for them. And you can't recruit in the early days. You can't like try and get new people, because A, they don't want to hear it, and B, they're not ready. The common people ask me what's my business model. I tell them I sort for people who are ready. And so you gotta have people who are to answer your question, you've got to like reframe. And I love that construct in general. You have to reframe what it's about. Whatever it is, Halloween, Easter, birthdays, it's not about the crap. It's about whatever it's about, the birthday or the wedding or something. And
Mm.
you
Point.
really will mature into not even thinking about it. And people don't believe me when I say that. Like you will not even think about the sugar. You will not think about the celebration. It won't be a thing. You can say another thing they don't believe is that other people give a crap whether they're eating the birthday cake or the wedding cake. They don't like they say, would you like wedding cake? You say no. Nobody says I mean, in the beginning they do because you're famous for eating cake. But after a while, and sometimes this is positive and happens a lot, is your kids, your spouse, your other friends, they go to bat for you. They're like, no, 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 she doesn't eat that. No, no. No. They
Yeah.
they stick up for you, they help you. So
And
it
there,
does change, and I'm here to tell you, with thousands of people that have done it, it does change, and your life can be different, and you can be thin, and you can be diabetes free, and about a million fatty liver. My head coach is 72 years old. She lost 60 pounds, and she put fatty liver in remission starting at age 68. Okay.
amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, if
Mhm.
you've been diagnosed with any of these things, type 2, we got so many I lost count of the type 2 remissions,
Oh.
people. And everyone, 95% of them, their joints stop hurting.
Hmm.
Like it
Yeah.
just stops.
Yes. Goes away because that
So,
inflammation, because sugar fuels all that inflammation.
right.
For sure. Good stuff. Well, thank you. No, that's a great answer. I appreciate that reframing. You're absolutely right. When enough time goes by, in the
Yeah.
early days, there might be a bit of a struggle with that. And some people do have food pushers in their lives who will be like, "No, have the cake," because it makes them feel better if you eat the cake. And that's just really exercising that muscle of redeveloping some new boundaries and saying,
Yeah.
"Nope, that's not
The
what I
food
do."
pushers like you're describing are a little troublesome at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah, but
After a while.
if we can see through it and say, you know what, it just makes that it's kind of like your old friends who used to drink. If you don't drink anymore, they feel worse about themselves if you're not drinking in front of them. It's kind of a similar type of a thing. So again, to see through that and say, that's not really for my benefit. And
Yeah.
my new identity, as James Clear would say, is that I don't do that anymore. So,
And for the folks who are information gatherers and this is their first time through and they're just letting this light on them, you have
mhm,
to realize that it's not their fault, okay?
mhm.
They're the same reciprocal reason why be getting in a group or a community. Hey, this even works in cancer. Like if you um joined a cancer support group, after you got clear of cancer, your chances of long-term survival go through the roof. This is very well proven peer recovery is the only thing that's ever worked in alcohol and drugs. But those
Mm.
food pushers and those people who like they don't they're genuinely fearful for you that you're leaving this tribe. You're
What a good
changing.
point.
And so they're trying to keep you in
Good
because
point.
1,000 years ago, this innate thing that if you lost the tribe, you could die is
Yeah.
real. It's tribal. It's in us. And the sugar group or whatever, that group of people who has to have, you have to have the cake. It's like christening, or what, yeah, christening the,
Yeah.
the event because you ate the cake with them, right? That's
Yeah.
not a thing, really. It's not. And so they're going to try and pull for the same reason that you will be successful by joining another tribe, right?
Yes, that's such a great point because we have that very deep innate drive to be part of community
Right.
and not to be isolated from the pack. And
Yeah.
so that's I hadn't thought about that, but they're trying to make sure you don't get kicked out. You're staying within the tribe. Good
Yep.
point.
Yep. It's
Hmm.
the same thing that will heal you could pull against you if you understand it. If you and you can't blame them and you can't shame them and you can't because they're not at the same place of both agony and research and that you are. They're in a
Right.
different place. And you have to accept that. I know that sounds, I know when I tell you, oh, just accept it, blah, 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 but it's true. Acceptance, gratitude, these principles, these common or these well-known principles work here too.
They do. They do. And it just reminds me of the saying, nothing worse than a convert. And it's true.
Oh yeah, nothing worth
So
doing
annoying, right?
an ex-drinker, right? Exactly.
Yeah, it's just so annoying. Leave me alone. Like, quit it.
Right,
So, yeah,
right.
no, that's a great point too for us
And
all
if
of us.
you want to keep like I always tell people, if I didn't have anybody that didn't drink or do sugar, like I wouldn't have any friends or family. And if you want to keep your friends and family, don't become a proselytizer. It's just,
Right. That's
I tell
right.
this story because I think it's a message that people need to hear. And I get so many thank yous every day that it's worth it. But not in your own group, not in the beginning.
Mhm.
Like you'll just alienate people and it'll hurt you because you won't be able to understand why they're mad at you.
Right. And why they're not as excited as you are.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's right. Why they're not as excited as you.
Well, then, Mike, this has been so much fun. Thank
It
you.
has been fun. You ask great questions and you allow me to, like, I get asked to go on a lot of weight loss podcasts or keto or whatever, and they're not willing to hear this part of the story that you let get out.
Oh, good. Well, that's been my mission for Pretty Well. So thank you. That makes me feel great.
Good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you again for joining us. You've got so many resources, guys. I'll have the links in the show notes, quitsugar.com.